Hey, Morgan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about your work here at Heartland and telehealth specifically. I'm excited to kind of dive into that. You have some different experience with that than I do, so excited to learn and hear from you about what makes telehealth kind of a great option for folks. Maybe if you want to start by just telling us who you are and how you got here.
Yeah, of course. It's great to honestly talk about this because I feel like there is so much stuff out there now with telehealth from COVID and all that stuff. So I am very happy to kind of talk over this and everything. Um, just a little bit about me. I went through the master's program during COVID times. So a lot of my education about counseling and how to become a therapist was all done telehealth and all done virtually. So I think it's pretty cool and I'm really comfortable kind of doing it that way. But just a little bit about me before we really dive into that. I see a lot of kind of young adult clients, 18 and up, very much women identifying kind of focused. Start with a lot of just anxiety, self esteem, and kind of confidence building, which is very much what got me into kind of wanting to become a therapist with my own struggles in those areas. So, really kind of helping others build their self back up to be their best selves. And any like career or like grief, really kind of figuring those stuff out of how we can work best.
I think that piece of your own experience, a lot of what we hear from our clients is reflective of how we get it, and so I think that bit of self disclosure is really helpful. So thank you for that. Also, going through school during COVID, you were trained in telehealth in a way that I never was for sure. I didn't do telehealth until COVID. And so I think that being a little bit more organic for you as far as like how you learned makes a lot of sense as to why that makes you especially equipped to work with people via telehealth. Let's start with just a few of like what are the pros and cons, like what's the best reason to do telehealth, because it's obviously different than kind of traditional in-office therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I think the biggest pro and the one that a lot of people do kind of go back to is just that real convenience, that flexibility, the ease of being able to maybe schedule a session between errands and other work stuff that you can't actually drive to an office and have that
Hmm.
extra time then at that point. So, really, just that overall flexibility that clients are able to have, even also with their own just environment of where they're at when they do the telehealth. Maybe they feel more comfortable in their house talking about some of these more painful things and starting out that way instead of coming to an office, sitting in the waiting room, having all like the public kind of stigma potentially.
Sure. So you make a good point there about doing it from your house. Can you speak a little to like where is a good place for telehealth and maybe what is not the right place to do telehealth?
Yes, yes. So, definitely when it comes to telehealth, really same kind of like HIPAA compliance apply. You want to be in a safe, quiet place. You don't want other people around. You are going to be talking about your own issues, your own feelings, all of that kind of stuff stays the same. So, really making sure you are in your own private area. You're not
Hmm.
having people come in. You also are not driving. Granted, maybe we are in a car, pulled over, parked. You are not driving, though, while doing any of this either.
I appreciate you highlighting that. I know that I've supervised a lot. I have access to a lot of people's experiences and stories clinically, and lots of times people are wanting to do telehealth while they're at Target or while they're doing their grocery shopping, and that's not therapeutic. That is not what we're talking about here. But you make also a good point about being in your car. I know that during COVID, I saw a lot of people while they were in their car because nobody had anywhere else to go. And so that is a safe, quiet space, but like parked,
Exactly.
turned
Parked,
off.
pulled over. We're not driving
Yeah.
during any of
Yeah.
it.
I know. I mean, for sure, I saw some people like while they were parked in their garage, which is funny. Um, so obviously convenience. What else in the pro category would you say is like a really good reason to look into telehealth?
Yeah. One thing that I feel like gets overlooked a little bit is just kind of that aspect that it's less straining for the client in sense of having to get resources. So if you are a
Mm-hmm.
parent and trying to find childcare to then pay for childcare while you just go to a therapy session, sometimes it is less barriers if we are just telehealth from those kinds of
Sure.
aspects.
Right. So there's that accessibility piece,
Yeah. Yeah.
time and resources. Because if you like to use your example of using or getting a babysitter, if you're driving somewhere, you're paying for drive time as well as the session time versus just having that 1 hour, 50 minutes that you are on your computer, which maybe could all totally happen during nap time or, you know, something like that, or your lunch break from work. Um, so that increased accessibility makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And also maybe let's say you're someone who can't actually drive or not that reliable of a car or transportation where I'm not going to be able to go weekly in person, but I could do weekly telehealth.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point too. Um, can you see people anywhere in the whole world on telehealth?
No, I cannot. So the rule of thumb is can't cross state lines. So I'm licensed in Missouri. That means I can see anyone in the state of Missouri as long as they are still currently in the state of Missouri.
Right. And how do you know where a person is?
So that comes to real intake of like, okay, tell me where you live, any trips coming up, anything like that, where you're not going to be in that same kind of background environment that I would be used to seeing. So also if any of that does kind of shift, a real just check in the session of, hey, where you at? We in Missouri, what's kind of going on, confidential space. If that does come back to be like, oh, I decided to drive to see family in Chicago randomly or something like that, then that's when it comes to, okay, let's pause, let's reschedule this whenever you're back in the state.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's I mean that's just the liability and licensing piece of our profession. But that brings kind of another point up that you can see somebody in the whole entire state, right? And so it doesn't have to be somebody who's hyper local. It can be somebody who's in southern Missouri or we're in Kansas City, but you could have clients in St. Louis or rural Missouri or anywhere
Yeah.
through the whole state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
How
really,
might that be helpful? Yeah.
yeah, because it really adds just like that extra access to those people who, like you said, in the rural communities, there might not be a therapist for an hour and a half drive away.
Hmm.
So really having this just accessibility for them to be like, you can get this type of treatment too. You can have mental health care as well. And having just that distance doesn't have to be as big of a barrier as we feel like
Right.
it is.
And I think too, when you are working or if you're living in a maybe smaller community or, well, any community, but it might be part of the privacy aspect to meet with a therapist who is not part of your community. Or if you're in a small town that there's just the only therapist is, your mom or something.
Right.
Um, so
Having just
that,
that privacy.
right. Yeah. Um, what about the cons or considerations maybe in terms of using telehealth? What are some of the trade-offs?
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely a couple standout trade-offs when we are just being telehealth. So the first and foremost is it's not the best suitable for people who have those more intense mental health concerns. So throwing out kind of suicide ideation, any kind of suicide self-harm, those are those higher up levels of care where we may really need to be in person for those sessions, really checking in and having that easier access in case anything does go wrong. So for
Mhm.
those kinds of clients, telehealth may not be the best, and we would just refer to an in-person, have them really get that set up for them.
Right. Um, so in our practice at Heartland, everyone is trained in EMDR therapy, so eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Is that how has your experience been with using EMDR online with folks?
Yeah. So that was the other kind of fun aspect, I guess I want to say. I chose to pick a EMDR training that was taught online. So all of the ways that I was taught on how to even do EMDR was through telehealth and was through virtually. So even just having those like bilateral stimulation website that you can pull up, have on the screen that has the dot for them to follow back and forth.
Mhm.
Or when it comes to tapping, you just have them show on the shoulders those taps, and you can still see those bits and pieces too.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the point there is that you're not limited to strictly talk therapy because you're online, that there can really be some of that more high level personal care.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
especially for like CBT things and DBT things, a lot of those skills are very transferable when it comes to teaching, watching videos in person or telehealth.
Hmm. I wonder, um, are you able to share your screen when you're doing telehealth? It's a little off script. So you could like pull resources up or a video up and really have a maybe more comprehensive toolkit because of that access too.
Yeah, definitely. I share my screen almost in every telehealth session now that I'm like reflecting on it when it comes to just showing the PDF that I may send them for homework or
Mm,
let's watch this 3-minute video over opposite action and then talk after of like what you got from it and what kind of concerns maybe you come from that.
right. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. Um, excellent. So, are there other things that we want to think about in terms of considerations when it comes to telehealth?
Yeah, I would say that there's two other main ones kind of. The one that I'm thinking of first really goes into what we just kind of talked about of sharing that screen, watching videos online. Unfortunately, one of the barriers is really needing that stable, reliable internet connection.
Right.
So, unfortunately, that does become a barrier at times. Let's say with a random storm and it's kind of blowing the power lines a little bit, or just you're having a really off day and Wi Fi just goes down and we have to call Spectrum or things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That makes sense. So the internet connection, and then you said there were two. So what's the other one?
Internet, and then also just since you are being telehealth for the client side of things, sometimes it does feel like that rapport, that just relationship is harder to build in the sense of it takes a little bit longer. We're not in person, we're not feeling or seeing maybe those empathy, body behaviors, those kinds of things that come out just because the screen only shows so much. So, really, just kind of knowing that that part may take just a little bit more time to build up.
Hmm. Yeah. So that makes sense too. It could also, though, be a more accessible way to start if you haven't been in therapy. At this point in time, probably plenty of people have done other online meetings. So there's some more familiarity or comfort to getting in front of your computer and talking to somebody that is maybe not there for that is not the same as coming in office and figuring all of that out.
Right, right. Real just kind of social anxiety point of like, okay, let me just talk to someone new online first and see how that goes.
Yeah. Um, sure thought I had a next step. What else do you want to add? Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is important for people to just kind of consider? And maybe it's in working with you altogether, not specifically to telehealth.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, for working with me or being telehealth, the way that I always approach every session is just being that open, non-judgmental, person-centered therapist. So
Hmm.
really just knowing that whether you're coming in for just kind of a little maintenance of a little, I had some stuff kind of bubble up, it's not a giant big T trauma, or maybe it is a big T trauma that we're going to dive into. Really just kind
Hmm.
of meeting them where they're at and knowing that we're going to kind of get through this together of whatever comes.
Right. Yeah, I think that that all sounds really good and can make just that ongoing care. I'm thinking too of people going back and forth again within the state to school, or home for summer break, back to UMKC, or those kinds of arrangements, can be make things really accessible. Um, yeah. Is there anything else you want us to know, just kind of about your work, your style? Who are the people that I know you have said at the beginning, kind of women and some of those things, but who are the people that are most of your clients, the ones that you really kind of work the best with?
Yeah. Um, Honestly, love a goofy person. I'm a goofy person to begin with. I want to also have fun sometimes in our sessions. It doesn't have to be as intense and as serious every second in that 50 minutes.
Yeah, great.
So, really, just having that humor side come out, that just we're both humans and let's kind of giggle sometimes. And then we can really kind of connect even deeper in that way, too, of like self disclosure of, okay, we just kind of laughed at this funny video. Let's maybe kind of recollect and go a little deeper now, in a sense.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I think that's great. Um, Anything else you want us to know about your work or telehealth or anything?
One just last little thing of really when it comes to telehealth, it's great when it comes to just like non-traditional hours for any
Mm.
sort of like sessions. So let's say you have your 9 to 5, you have stuff after that that you have to do, and your only time to meet is at like an 8 p.m.
Mhm.
No one really wants to go to an office at 8 p.m., I'll be honest.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I think that that's an interesting point. It allows you as the therapist to have a little bit more flexibility and availability, because it's not such, I don't know, burdensome is the word that comes to mind, but you also don't have to go to an office or add in driving time. And so that makes that a little bit, you can maybe work all day or work in the afternoon and take some time off and then come back without geography being a big barrier.
Right, right.
Yeah, that's great. Um, Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about telehealth and just what the pros and cons are and anything. Oh, I just remembered. Okay, the last thing is when we were talking about internet connection. How about privacy? AI is everywhere. Things are recorded. Are you recording telehealth sessions?
I do not record any telehealth sessions.
Okay, that's what I figured, but I feel like we should say that very explicitly. So I'm glad I remembered. Yeah, so things are not being recorded. You are using our electronic healthcare software. So I think that might be something that people don't know, is that you're not just like FaceTiming or Zoom meeting for these sessions. Speak a little bit to that, like privacy in the platform.
Yeah, yeah. It all, again, really goes back to just like that HIPAA compliance of like, okay, we are online. There's going to be your intake form that is in our system. So we need to make sure that this system has all the security that we need it to have. So, like for us, we use Simple Practice. They are HIPAA compliant. That is where you will go in and have your session through the Simple Practice app. I'm not going to call you on your normal cell phone. We're not doing any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I think that that is just going to become more and more important, that you aren't sacrificing privacy or confidentiality by doing online sessions. Um, that those same standards apply. That you're going to do the same kind of documentation you do in your regular sessions or in-person sessions as you do in telehealth, and all of that will continue to be the same.
treatment plan, soap notes, all of that will be the exact same as if you were in person. The only thing different is that I just see your face on a screen.
Right. Great. Okay, this time for real. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time. And obviously, people can reach out to you through our website, and links are all in the notes, comments, bio section of everywhere. So, thank you so much.
Of course, of course.